are back with Ramona, who I hope you've been enjoying, and we are going to be on chapter 5.
The camera's different.
So yesterday we went to see Ramona, and she had, remember it was the hard-boiled egg fad. And a fad at school is when somebody does something and it becomes cool with everybody, so everybody does it. And so everybody had started eating hard-boiled eggs, and remember that her mom accidentally had pulled the egg off the wrong shelf, and it was a soft egg, so mushy. And remember the different techniques for mushing it on their head. Maybe you even tried this yesterday. With a big whack on the head to crack the egg open, or some people go tap, 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 tap. And usually on that kind of egg, you just peel the shell away a few pieces at a time. But her egg was raw on the inside, so she had the egg dripping down her head. She had to go to the clinic and get cleaned up. And but then Yard Ape kind of came and got her and took her back down. And then she kind of liked him a little bit. So they had dinner in the last one, and she had not forgiven her mom for that. And so she was having dinner, and they discovered that they were having tongue for dinner, which in my book is but a lot of people love it. So anyway, she was not happy about it. They were whining, they were complaining, and then her mom said, well, why don't you guys do dinner tomorrow night? So that's where we left off. We're going to back up just a little bit to kind of warm our brains up from yesterday, and then we'll take off into our new chapter called Extra Good Sunday. And her mother, maybe if Ramona could forgive her for not boiling the eggs, she would be happy. In her heart, Ramona had forgiven her, and she was sorry that she'd been so cross with her mother. She longed to go and tell her, but now she could not when she was being punished. And remember, they feel like their parents having them cook dinner as a punishment. So, Extra Good Sunday. Sunday morning, Ramona and Beezus were still resolved to be perfect until dinner time. They got up without being called. They avoided arguing over who should read Dear Abby's advice first in the paper. They complimented their mother on her French toast, and they went off through the drizzly rain to Sunday school, neat, combed, and bravely smiling. Later, they cleaned up their rooms without being told, and at lunchtime, they ate without complaint the sandwiches that they knew were made of ground-up tongue. A little pickle relish did not fool them, but it didn't help either. They dried the dishes and carefully avoided looking in the direction of the refrigerator, lest their mother be reminded they were supposed to cook dinner that evening. Mr. and Mrs. Quimby were good-humored. In fact, everyone was so unnaturally pleasant that Ramona almost wished someone would say something cross. By early afternoon, the question was still hanging in the air. Would the girls really have to prepare dinner? Why doesn't somebody say something? Ramona thought, bleary of being so good. She was weary of longing to forgive her mother for the raw egg and the lunch. Well, back to the old foot, said Mr. Quimby, as he once more settled himself on the couch with his drawing pad and pencil, pulled off his shoe and sock. The rain had finally stopped. Ramona watched for dry spots to appear on the sidewalk, and she thought of her roller skates in the closet. She looked in Beezus' room and found her sister reading. Ramona knew Beezus wanted to telephone Mary Jane, but she had decided to wait until Mary Jane called to ask why she could not come over. Mary Jane did not call, and the day dragged on. When dry spots on the concrete in front of the Quimby's house widened until the moisture remained only in the cracks of the sidewalk, Ramona pulled out her skates and, to her father, who was holding a drawing of his foot at arm's length to study it, she said, well, I guess I'm going out to skate. Aren't you forgetting something? He asked. What? Said Ramona, knowing very well what. Dinner, he said. The question that had hung in the air all day was answered. The matter was settled. We're stuck, Ramona told Beezus. Now we can stop being so good. The sisters went into the kitchen, shut the door, and opened the refrigerator. A package of chicken thighs, said Beezus with a groan, and a package of frozen peas, a yogurt, 1 carton of plain and 1 carton of banana. There must have been a special on yogurt. She closed the refrigerator and reached for a cookbook. I could make place cards, said Ramona, as Beezus frantically flipped the pages. We can't eat place cards, said Beezus. Besides, cornbread is your job because you brought it up. Both girls spoke in whispers. There was no need to let their parents, the mean old parents, know what was going on in the kitchen. In her mother's recipe file, Ramona found the card for cornbread written in Mr. Quimby's grandmother's shaky handwriting, which Ramona found very difficult to read. "I can't find a recipe for chicken thighs," said Beezus, "just for a whole chicken. All I know is that Mother bakes thighs in a flat glass dish with some kind of sauce on them. Mushroom soup mixed up with something and some kind of little specks in it stirred in." Ramona remembered that much from watching her mother. Beezus opened the cupboard of canned goods. "But there isn't any mushroom soup," she said. "What are we going to do?" "Well, mix up something wet," suggested Ramona. "It would serve 'em right if it tasted awful." "Why don't we make something awful," said Beezus, "so they'll know how we feel when we have to eat tongue." "What tastes really awful?" Ramona was eager to go along with the suggestion, united with her sister against the enemy, for the moment, their parents. Beezus, always practical, changed her mind. That wouldn't work, because we'd have to eat it too, and they're so mean, we'll probably have to do the dishes besides. Anyways, I guess you might say our honor is at stake, because they think we can't even cook a good meal. Ramona was ready with another solution. "I know. Throw everything all into one dish." Beezus opened the packaged chicken thighs and stared at them with distaste. "Oh, I can't stand touching raw meat," she said. She picked up a thigh between two forks. "Do we have to eat the skin?" asked Ramona. "All those yucky little bumps on it." Beezus found a pair of kitchen tongs. She tried holding down with a thigh with a fork and pulling the skin off with the tongs. "Here, let me hold it," said Ramona. She wasn't squeamish about touching such things as worms or raw meat. She took a firm hold of the thigh, and Beezus grasped the skin with the tongs. Both pulled, and the skin peeled right away. They played tug-of-war with each thigh, leaving a sad-looking heap of skins on the counter and a layer of chicken thighs in the glass dish. "Can't you remember what the little specks are that Mother uses?" said Beezus. Ramona could not. The girls studied the spice shelf. They unscrewed jar lids and sniffed. "Nutmeg? No." "Cloves? Oh, terrible." "Cinnamon? Chili powder? Well, yes, that must be it." Ramona remembered that the specks were red. Beezus stirred half a teaspoon of the dark red chili powder into the yogurt and then poured it over the chicken. And if you know anything about chili powder, it's very hot. It adds a lot of heat to whatever you're cooking. She slid the dish into the oven at 350 degrees, the temperature for chicken recommended by the cookbook. From the living room came the sound of their parents' conversation, sometimes serious and sometimes highlighted by laughter. "Well, we're slaving out here," thought Ramona as she climbed up on the counter to reach a box of cornmeal. After she climbed down, she discovered she had to climb up again for baking powder and soda. She finally knelt on the counter to save time and asked Beezus if she could bring her an egg. "It's a good thing Mother can't see you up there," remarked Beezus as she handed Ramona the egg. "How else am I supposed to reach things?" Ramona successfully broke the egg and tossed the shell on the counter. "Now I need buttermilk." Beezus broke the news. There was no buttermilk in the refrigerator. "What'll I do?" whispered Ramona in a panic. "Here, use this." Beezus thrust the carton of banana yogurt at her sister. "Yogurt is sort of sour, so it might work." The kitchen door opened a crack. "What's going on in there?" inquired Mr. Quimby. Beezus hurled herself against the door. "You stay out," she ordered. "Dinner's going to be a surprise." For a moment, Ramona thought Beezus had been going to say a mess. She stirred the egg and yogurt together. She measured the flour, spilling some on the floor, and then she discovered that she was short of cornmeal. More panic. "My cooking teacher says you should always check to see if you have all the ingredients before you start to cook," said Beezus. "Oh, shut up." Ramona reached for the package of cream of wheat because its grains were about the size of cornmeal. She scattered only a little on the floor. Something was needed to sop up the sauce with little red specks when the chicken was served. Rice. The spilled cream of wheat gritted underneath Beezus's feet as she measured rice and boiled water according to the directions on the package. When the rice was cooking, she slipped into the dining room to set the table, and then she remembered they forgot the salad. Oh, salad! Carrot sticks were the quickest. Beezus began to scrape carrots into the sink. "Yipe!" yelped Ramona from the counter. "The rice!" The lid of the pan was chittering away. Beezus snatched the larger pan from the cupboard and transferred the rice. Do you girls need any help? Mrs. Quimby called from the living room. No, answered the daughters. Another calamity. The cornbread should bake at 400 degrees, a higher temperature than they needed for the chicken. What was Ramona going to do? Oh, just stick it in the oven anyway, Beezus said. Her face was all flushed. In went the cornbread right beside the chicken. Dessert, whispered Beezus. All she could find was a can of boring pear halves. Back to the cookbook. Heat with a little butter and serve with jelly inside each half of the pear, she said. Jelly. Half a jar of apricot jam would have to do. The pears and the butter went into a saucepan. Never mind some of the syrup spilled on the floor. Do you get the feeling that there's a big mess in the kitchen? Eggshells and carrot peels and stuff on the floor for cornmeal and flour and... Beezus! Ramona held up the package of peas. Beezus groaned. Out came the partially cooked chicken while she stirred the thawing peas into the yogurt and shoved the dish back into the oven. Oh, the rice! They'd forgotten the rice, which was only beginning to stick to the pan. Quick, take it off the burner. How did their mother manage to get everything cooked at the right time? Put the carrot sticks on a dish. Pour the milk. Candles, Beezus whispered. Dinner might look better if we have candles. Ramona found 2 candle holders and 2 partly melted candles of uneven length. One of them had been used in the Halloween jack-o'-lantern. Beezus struck the match to light them, because although Ramona was brave about touching raw meat, she was kind of skittish about lighting matches. Was the chicken done? The girls anxiously examined their main dish, bubbling and brown around the edges. Beezus stabbed the thigh with a fork, and when it did not bleed, she decided it must be done. A toothpick pricked into the cornbread and came out clean. Grit, grit, grit sounded under the girls' feet. It was amazing how a tiny bit of spilled cream of wheat could make the entire floor seem gritty. At last their dinner was served in the dining room. The light was turned off. Dinner was announced, and the cooks, tense with anxiety, announced that their dinner was ready. They all fell into their chairs as their parents seated themselves. Was this dinner going to be edible? Candles! Exclaimed Mrs. Quimby. What a festive meal! Let's taste it before we decide, said Mr. Quimby with a little bit of a wicked smile. The girls watched anxiously as their father took his first bite of chicken. He chewed thoughtfully, and then with more surprise than necessary said, Why, this is good! It really is, said Mrs. Quimby, and she took a bite of cornbread. Very good, Ramona, she said. Mr. Quimby tasted the cornbread. Just like my grandmother used to make, he pronounced. The girls exchanged suppressed smiles. They could not taste the banana yogurt by candlelight. No one could tell that the cornbread was a little bit pale. The chicken, Ramona decided, was not as good as her parents thought or pretended to think, but she could eat it without gagging. Everyone relaxed, and Mrs. Quimby said chili powder was much more interesting than paprika, and she asked which recipe they used for the chicken. Ramona answered, Our own recipe. She exchanged another look with Beezus. Paprika. Those little specks in the sauce should have been paprika. And paprika is a spice. It's kind of a reddish color, and sometimes when you have deviled eggs, they sprinkle a little bit of that red powder on top of it, and it is not hot like chili powder is. We just wanted to be creative, said Beezus. Conversation was more comfortable than it had been the previous evening. Mr. Quimby said he was finally satisfied with his drawing, which did look like a real foot. Beezus said her cooking class was studying the food groups that everyone should eat every day. Ramona said there was this boy at school who called her Egghead. Mr. Quimby explained Egghead was slang for a very smart person. Ramona was beginning to feel better about Yard 8. The meal was a success. If the chicken did not taste as good as the girls had hoped, and the cornbread did not rise like their mother's, they were both edible. Beezus and Ramona were silently grateful to their parents for enjoying or pretending to enjoy their cooking. The whole family had cheered up. When they had finished their pears with apricot jam, Ramona gave her mother a shy smile. Mrs. Quimby smiled back and reached over and patted Ramona's hand. Ramona felt much lighter. Without using words, she had forgiven her mother for the unfortunate egg, and her mother had understood. Ramona could be happy again. You cooks have worked so hard, said Mr. Quimby. I'm going to wash the dishes. I'll even finish clearing the table. I'll help, said Mrs. Quimby. The girls exchanged another secret smile as they excused themselves and skipped off to their rooms before their parents discovered the pile of chicken skins and broken eggshells on the counter, the carrot scrapings in the sink, and the cream of wheat, flour, and pear syrup on the floor. So, their little dinner turned out better than expected. The girls actually kind of liked cooking once they got going. They were very creative about it. Have you ever cooked your own dinner? Have your parents ever had you cook a dinner? That's kind of a fun thing to do. That might be something you want to do while you're home with your family. You could have everybody pick a night and learn to cook while you're home. That could be really fun. Mom could sit on the couch, Dad could sit on the couch, and you could go make dinner for them. That would be kind of a nice treat. Okay. Well, I hope you love this chapter, and tune in tomorrow for chapter 6 called Super Nuisance. And I have to tell you, I've read ahead, and it is kind of a funny chapter. So I'll see you tomorrow. I enjoyed reading. Make sure you're reading at home too. And we'll catch up tomorrow. Bye.